you know, Jim, you've been just such an amazing legend in this space. And, I think that it's really important that people who see this understand that, especially the young kids, because they have so little patience for anything and they need, instant gratification from videos, that in life, the older you get, you realize that you have to learn, and you have to learn from people who have great experience and great wisdom and great advice.
I'm honored that you say that.
Well, let me finish up one thing, Jimmy.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Listen, kids today, they look at Elon Musk and they go, wow, Elon Musk, and he's the richest guy in the world. And he's a brilliant, brilliant guy. And he's doing some just absolutely amazing things. But to that point, Jimmy, you have saved people's lives. You know what I'm saying? And again, I always say this. I don't think that the parents, the brothers, sisters, friends, and family can ever repay, what you've done. And so that's why it's important when we start this that I let people know how amazing what you have done in your career. So thank you for that. And now you can start with what we discussed.
One of the things that I've learned at my point in life is that I want to be like a sponge. I want to keep learning. I don't believe that I have all the answers, and I'm honest enough with people in my life and people I care about like you to say that, and that I keep learning almost every day from different people around the country and around the globe. And it's been an interesting journey. And for instance, my second song is coming out on my birthday on the 10th on Sunday. And my second song is finished, called Fight for Your Dreams. And the first one has gone all over the world. So it's really interesting to have these different experiences at my point in life, and to know that, I want to still grow. And I think every person should, in some way, shape, or form, feel that way about themselves. Because if you stop, then everything ends in your life. You don't move past a certain point. And that is scary. And, growing old is scary for people because we don't grow old gracefully in this country. We're always, pushed into institutions and, left there, and, people don't visit, and we're there, and people, die there. Well, I'm not going to be there. I mean, I may be in an institution, but I'm always going to ask people, questions and ideas, and, what's new out there. And even, yesterday I was at my ophthalmologist, and last Friday I was at the ophthalmologist, and then the retinal specialist on Thursday. And for the viewers, I'm semi-blind. I woke up on May 17th, 2018. That's 6 years ago. And the blood vessels in my eyes had erupted. And the only thing I could see out of my eyes was black. And I thought, this is pretty much the end of my life. I'm not a podium speaker. I don't stand there and at a podium and talk. I move around. I'm interactive. In addition, I travel all over the world. And my circumstances were, how was I going to do that? How was I going to navigate? And I didn't know. And my first 2 weeks was, depression after depression after depression. And finally, I had people. I'm a goals person, and I have like 8 or 10 pages of goals that I've accomplished all over, and they're not simple goals. They're very complex on many levels. And I had people.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How important are those goals for people today? When you look at today's generation, I mean, number one thing that kids want to be today is an influencer. Okay.
Right.
And so when you say goals, okay, what's some of the steps that you take to achieve those goals? I mean, especially at your age.
When I was young, in my 20s, I was in touch with a man. His name is John Goddard. And John is out in California. He's since passed, but he was the father of goals. And he, for the next, 40 years or more, he became my mentor. And I learned from him. Life magazine did a feature story on him when he was 18. And he had written 126 goals of what he wanted to achieve in his life. And he wanted to navigate all the world's rivers and climb the mountains. He wanted to, translate the Bible. He wanted to, catch a lobster of 5 pounds or more, high jump, over 6 feet. And the list goes on. Wanted to fly a plane onto a battleship. And Life magazine featured him because it was so fascinating. 25 years later, after Life magazine came back, because it was down in publication, first place they went to was John. And they asked John, how has your life been? And he said, beyond anything I could even begin to imagine. And the interviewer said, what was the secret? And he said, getting up every day with a focus and to achieve a goal. And then once you achieve that goal, you move on to the next goal and the next goal and the next goal. And it was fascinating to me to learn this process. And I've taught this to more than, 250,000 people all over, because I believe in my heart that if you have goals, you don't just fester inside. You don't give up. You keep moving forward.
Okay, so you need some water?
Yeah, let me get some water. There it is. You keep growing. You keep learning. You keep, contributing and teaching. But equally important, you do that. I just sent my goals list, which is over 8 pages, completely, small copy, but 8 pages and more than 350 goals. And I sent it to a young man that I had mentored since he's 15. And he became the majority whip in the Kentucky legislature. And he was the, one of he was the president of the Breeders' Cup, and, lots and lots of things that he's achieved. Anyway, he got it. He was out at a race in California, and he got my list of goals, and he called back last night and said to Jan, I read through this list, and it just made me tired because I couldn't believe that all of these things, that this person was able to do. And I have documentation, I have pictures, I have all the rest of the stuff for any person that questions, are these legitimate? But it's been a great life. And when people get up in the morning and they don't have that purpose and they don't have that focus, you can't function at the high rate that you want to function. And unfortunately, that is a great percentage of the population that gets up and just meanders through the day and doesn't really, have a. But here's what I'm saying to people as well. My message, to more than 2 million students was life has no guarantees. Tell somebody you care. Now is the only moment. And I gave a little backstory to that. People get up in the morning and they have everything going for them in their life. By nightfall, everything's upside down. And we see it in in natural disasters. So this is real. And I'm hoping that all ages, but mostly young people, get into a focused situation. And I'd be honored and happy to talk to you, share the process of how to do this, because it is a small process. And then equally important, because so many people aren't happy. And one of the things that I discovered after, having so many different jobs early in my life was that I wasn't happy. And
so when you say this, all right, but I don't want to lose sight of the one thing. So you're saying that keeping a list of goals is important. Writing down your goals.
Well, actually learning the process.
Okay, great. So what is that process?
All right.
Right. I wake up, I want to do something different in my life. What would you say to start?
Let me backtrack just a little bit for you, Roy. One of the key things that I discovered, because I was changing jobs like crazy and I wasn't happy in them, and I would, when I graduated from Michigan State, I worked for 6 Fortune 500 companies in 18 months. Ford, General Motors, IBM, Shell Oil, American Airlines. And I started and I stopped and I quit, and I was just because it wasn't what I wanted to be about. So first, before you even start on the goals process, and I'm gonna ask this of you, Roy, because you've got a great mind, and I think that you'll be able to share this with the audience. Tell me, and this is only in the employment sector of your life. Tell me what your top 3 or 4 needs are in your life.
Well, at this particular stage, it's completely different from when I was younger, right? I needed fulfillment when I was younger. Now at this age, I have to provide for a family, right? So that's number one priority.
Correct. No, that is not under the category of needs. So let me share with you my needs, and then you come back with, with your ideas. Number 1, I I needed to make a difference in this earth. I
Okay.
didn't want to just be here. I didn't want to pass through. I needed to make a difference. The second one is I needed to be creative. I'm off the charts in terms of creativity. And every test I've ever taken that had that, I was at the top of that sector in creativity. The third thing is I couldn't work for anybody else. So when I became a speaker, I got a chance to fulfill those goals, but fulfill the needs first, because needs are like they're from our childhood. The needs, start, and it's like salmon swimming upstream. We will go after our needs at any price in our lives to get them. The big question is for you to identify them so you understand where you're going. Because most young people, when they make decisions on many levels, they throw a dart in a dartboard. And unfortunately, when you do that, you're just taking a risk. You're hoping that that dart hits the place that you need to be. So back to you. Three or four things that are your top needs in seeking out an employment situation.
Well, it's kind of tough because I've never really worked for anybody, so it's not easy. I've always been, I've
No.
started
I'm
something.
talking to you identifying, what are your needs? And I gave you three in a higher, place than just the mundane of it, discussing about, where it is, how much money it is, whatever it is, it you need to get into that space to determine so you could go to the next step, which is to create goals in your life to get to the place where your needs are met. If you don't get to the place where your needs are met, you're always going to be, feeling like you're not quite there in your life. And and by the way, this is nothing new in asking people. And it's a very, very difficult thing because there's a difference between needs and wants. Wants are created in our culture by advertising, by manipulation, by putting it up so that you will be noticed and everything, and people would acknowledge you. And ironically enough, I grew up with the master of that, of manipulation and advertising and everything, which was Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner, if you ever read, Playboy magazine, he always said, if you buy this stereo, if you get this car, if you wear this suit, if you had all of these, different trappings, that you would score with women. And millions of men took that up and then got angry, Roy, because they did all those things. They bought all those things and they didn't score with women. So it's interesting in terms of the manipulation that we deal with every day. And unfortunately, in this manipulation, we just years ago, and the only way I can give you this example, because you'll smile at this. Years ago, when I was living in New York, I went at Christmas time to Macy's, and I was walking around looking for gifts for my family, and I wandered into this room where these two women were literally fighting. And I mean fighting. They were bloodied up. People were, screaming at them, People were cheering. People were, disgusted, whatever. They were legitimately fighting over a Cabbage Patch doll. Because at that time, Cabbage Patch dolls were the high point for a gift for a kid. And I looked at this and I thought, how ridiculous is this? Well,
okay, so wait, go ahead, Fit. Well, here's my point to that. I take a look at that, what you just said, right? People were cheering, people were disgusted. What is wrong with humans where, I mean, listen, it's just like, the whole thing's just crazy. Divorce rates 57%, and then probably another 20% of those people are still married, or sticking around for some other reasons, kids, money, whatever it is. What is wrong with all of us? You start to take a look at all these things, and and again, what you're referring to is, right, how do you live a better quality of life, right? And everybody wants the perfect wife, the perfect husband, the perfect kids, right? And you hear it today all the time. My kids are perfect. You see the bumper stickers. My kids, and everybody's got smart kids, right? Everybody has the smartest kids in the world.
First of all,
what is wrong with everybody?
Perfection is an illusion. It is a total illusion. And there is no such thing as perfection. And when we perceive that perfection is, a certain thing, or certain amount of money, or a certain, we realize, after a period of time, this is not the truth. So perfection is, a challenge as well. Ironically enough, this is true, Roy, because we've talked many times about suicide. The best way I can tell you this, okay, is I had a friend of mine. His 4 children were more brilliant than the next. His eldest son got a full ride scholarship in pre-med to Johns Hopkins. And they found him hanging from the ceiling fan because he wanted to be perfect. And at Johns Hopkins, they grade in a different, a different scale type of situation. There are people at the bottom, there are people in the middle, there are people at the top. He was unfortunately down at the bottom. And then he felt like, wow, there's no reason to live anymore. And the irony of that is, if you graduate from Johns Hopkins in pre-med, doors open up for you. It doesn't matter whether you're the last in the class or the first in the class.
So my point is, listen, it wasn't just because of his pursuit of perfection. There's deeper issues than that. And that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, the mind is a crazy thing, right? We all have, to me, here, I'll give you a perfect example. I remember one time, my wife and the kids we were doing something for Easter, and trying to get the kids all dressed up and ready to go, and get everybody ready, get in the car. The whole thing was just a total disaster. I mean, kids are fighting and arguing, and me and my wife are arguing about all this. And then we get there, and of course we take our family photo. And so my wife had posted something about, like, oh, what a wonderful Easter at, wherever we were. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that was a total shit show. Like, I don't understand, like, what your post is like. And I'm the kind of person who, like, posts, like, underneath, like, it was a total nightmare. And then, she would get mad at me about it. And I would say, I try to tell people, it's like, the chaos is what it is, right? If you can't laugh at the chaos in your family and the imperfections, then you're going to have issues the whole way through, because
If you
families are
don't,
just
if you don't laugh on the other side of the coin on a regular basis. I mean, I the other day, and I tell people the story now. I'm semi-blind, and I went to my cardiologist, and I'm coming down in the elevator. I'm not in the elevator. I'm standing in front of the elevator that has the reflective doors that are steel and everything like that. And I was looking at the reflection, thinking someone was coming out of the elevator, but it was my reflection. And so I kept saying, come on, I'll wait for you. Come on, do this, do that. And everybody around me was doubled over in laughter because that was my reflection that I was talking to. But it's great to laugh at yourself because none of us are perfect. And the more laughter we have.
So what you're saying is that humility, right? Just having humility about it. Like, everybody, and it's funny because now I see these things with, all the divorced people now, right? Huge percentage of divorced people. And they're all sitting out there, and they are looking at the men, and the men are looking at the women, and and now that they're divorced, remember when you were married, you started with zero, right? So you just were attracted and fell in love with that person, and you basically started with nothing, and you built from there. Now that you're 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, now you're looking at going, okay, what do you have? What do you have? And these are things that I don't want, and these are things that I don't want. And they're looking at this whole list and going, oh yeah, no, I'm not going to tolerate that. So they're all sitting there, and nobody's dating anybody because they're pissed at each other. And everybody goes, these ladies go, well, it's okay. I've got a cat or I've got a dog. And I'm thinking, and I'm looking at these people going, are you crazy? Nothing is better than hugging that person or laying there watching TV with that person. But they cannot have that humility to come back down to where you started from zero. Because when you started with zero, you had no expectations, none. And so today I look at everybody and I think to myself, everybody wants this something, but yet when they get it, they don't realize that it's still a lot of work, right? You have to work at it.
It's an illusion when you get it because it is not real in terms of the individual. So often in the beginning of a relationship, people, are on their best behavior. They tell the other person, what they think the other person wants to hear. And consequently, we're not real to each other. And I love my wife with all my heart. I'm married for the first time. I got married at 64 years old, and I married the woman of my dreams. Had I gone through an online procedure and looked at her profile, I probably would have turned the page, would have missed out on the best thing that has ever happened in my life. But the idea is that nobody is going to show up to be perfect. And the more that you're able to celebrate each other and celebrate the differences, and that's in any part of your life, celebrate your differences and celebrate. I mean, my wife and I invited 500 people. I had 30 groomsmen. My best man was a woman, all non-conventional types of stuff. And she had one maid of honor. She invited 50 people, and she could have invited more because we had the wedding about 5 miles from our house in Western Michigan. But we have had our differences. The beauty for me is taking responsibility. So I never blame her for anything because I realized, and I I went with a lot of high profile women and everything. And, I had, an active life, an active social life. But I discovered with my wife that if I were honest with her and said to her, this is not about you in any kind of a fight or disagreement or whatever. This is not about you. This is about me, my fears, my insecurities, my issues. And Roy, in doing that, I discovered that it made her feel safe, because so often when people are at each other, they're blaming that other person for situations that are happening instead of owning your own responsibility. So this has been one of the things that has been one of the best gifts I give in my marriage, is to say that to my wife, because this was my wife's second marriage. And
Okay. But to that point too, though, I look at the younger couples that started off younger, right? I mean, when you get married at 60, it's different than getting married at 25. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to build to where you're going, right? You have to have that same commonality to build and go. And if one person keeps going this way and the other person's kind of like, over here and over here, it makes it very difficult. So when you met your wife at this time, you're already up here. So she's either got to come into play
I
with
got to
that.
tell you, I never saw, never in my mom and dad, when they got divorced, it was Uglyville, and it was a real challenge in my life. And I used
How old were you when they got
ask,
divorced?
I was 17.
Okay.
And when I speak, one of the things I ask my audience is, raise your hand if you come from a divorced family. And at least there has never been a school under 50%. When I do California schools, it's 95%. So I had nothing. I was standing there after I did my vows thinking, well, what now? What's going to happen now? How am I going to figure this out? Because I don't know which way I'm going. But I discovered that as long as I was able not to put her in the blame chair and get her, give her a feeling like she has to defend all the time, it gave our marriage a strength. And today, after 21 years, we're solid with each other, and we have a loving relationship. And I couldn't ask for anything better. And
Sure.
I have never been, as I said, I dated a lot of really, famous women over the course of my life. But my wife she's down to earth, she's real. But you know what is the beauty of our marriage? I get up every morning, Roy, and know I'm loved. When I get up every morning and know I'm loved,
It's a
it
great
gives
feeling.
me the strength. And to give you an idea, what she used to do when I was on the road speaking, before I would speak, either she called me and got me, or she put it on my voicemail. And she would say, Jim, I know you're going to make a difference in a kid's life today. I love you and I believe in you.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I just, when you start to take a look at the dynamic of the human person, right, and the mind, it's so crazy, and you feel bad for people. I feel bad for myself. It is so hard to manage all of these things that you have to do. You know, as I can only answer from being a man, a husband, father, you know, those types of things that I've done. You know, you have to manage so many emotions. It's so difficult, you know. And so you take a look at that, right? So you look at the health side of things, the mental side of things, the work side of things, the child rearing of things, the spouse. And then by the time you look at it, it's like, holy crap, now I got to freaking go work on my personal self, you know, mental, you know, being. And it's like, man, by the time you're done, like you need like, you know, 18-hour days just to get your life in order. And it's like, it's not easy.
If you approach it in the way of, you know, a situation where you're different, the other person is different, and how can I actually be able to feel safe in our marriage? Because safety is the best gift. I mean, so often people these days, safety is not even in the lineage. It's all about, you know, looks, and it's all about, you know, what that person, you know, has, and you know how dynamic is that person, and all the rest of the things. But safety in a marriage is, in my eyes, and you know, look, for all of you listening in the audience, I don't have all the answers, and I'm just the first one to tell you this. But I learned that safety gives us a chance to have an even keel when we discuss our differences. If you
Okay.
don't have that even keel, that other person is going to blame you, is going to do what I call history, which is tell that person, you know, 6 years ago, you did this and this and this, and I'm still pissed.
Yeah, but that's women. Women do that all the time. I hear about stuff from 25 years ago that I don't even remember, but women do that a lot. I would say that
you're
women
getting yourself into a space that people are going to turn off this podcast now. You know,
no. What I'm trying to say to you is that I know that women resent those harbor things of things that are said that, you know, they keep in their mind. I think that it's easier for men to discard it, which is probably just as bad, right? So I'm not saying it in the sense that, oh, it's just women that are doing it. No, it's that women do remember those things from that long ago.
If you go into the histrionics of this, if you go into history in any shape or form, you're going and treading on dangerous waters, because you're taking something out of the past that other person thinks, well, that was gone. You know, it's past us. And you're bringing that back and putting that in somebody else's face. You're screwed.
So no matter who it is, when you bring up the past, it's always going to be a bad outcome.
Because of one thing. When you did whatever you did, that other person should be moving on, and maybe doesn't, and holds on to something and keeps that inside. And
okay, great point.
Just magnifies.
No question, because it builds up into this container, and then it keeps filling and filling, and then it overflows.
Correct.
So my question is, like, I mean, you know, even me, you know, and I'm not saying that I'm great at anything, but I'm just saying that it's like, holy crap, man, there's just so much overwhelming of everything. You know, it's like to manage the relationship and expectations of someone else, to manage your own personal growth, then to realize that you have issues and then focus on those issues. Then remember we said earlier was get goals. Shit, by the time you've got these lists done, it's like you've got this list and I'd stare at it all day long and I would just like want to go back to sleep.
There are
You know,
two words. There are two words missing in our exchange right now.
Okay.
And I do this every day with my wife. Laughter and joy. I tease my wife. She teases me. I mean, we have this Jeopardy challenge that we've had since the beginning of COVID.
Hold on.
She just cleans my clock.
Hold on. Here's my question. If she teases you and you tease her, okay, are there times when you think that she doesn't like the teasing? Or you don't like it?
Very, very good question. And I have, over the years, put my foot in my mouth. But very good question. So in that particular case, you have to be honest with the person. And then, by the way, you damn well better learn not to do it again, because
but that's my whole point.
Insanity.
I understand that, but here's my point. When you're saying this and you're teasing with her and you're not sure, she's not here saying, "Oh yeah, this one bothers me and this one gets me annoyed." But I know he's just here's my point. I'm a guy. I have a bunch of different groups of guy friends. I don't think there's a time when we're not all busting each other's chops, right? Constantly. 24/7 for the last 35 years. It's what we do. And then I see my sons with his friends.
Different dynamic, Roy.
I get it. No. Here's
not in a marriage.
Here's my point in saying this. It isn't that about the guys. I know how to separate the guys from walking into a relationship side of it. But when you do that teasing banter and you think that you're doing it in a cute way and that it's funny, and then she might go, ha, ha, ha. But in the back of her head, she's going, what a jerk, right? But she laughs it off because she doesn't want to make a big deal of it. And my point is, how do you know when that is if that person doesn't say, hey, listen, I just want you to know that I know that you're
that is
funny.
Where the safety comes in, because in my particular case, that's all I can talk to you, to the audience about. In my particular case, my wife will say to me, that hurt my feelings. And
right away?
What? Yeah.
Okay.
Right out of the gate.
Okay.
Or I could look at her after all these years of marriage, and I could look at her and I could see the pain. And so I have to be empathetic, and I can't be. And I learned there was something just flipped into my head, Roy. Yeah. Many years ago, I did all kinds of crazy stuff, but I became a cake decorator. And I would give away these cakes, all the time. And I was having a lot of fun with it. When I started decorating cakes, my godmother's name is Rose. I mean, and they, when I got her a birthday cake, it said "Happy Birthday, Ross" on it, and she, teased me about it. And I told her, I said, I got her a day-old cake that was 50%, what the Rose name was on it. And she laughed about it. And I laughed about it too. And I thought, this is a great medium. I'm going to learn from this. So there was a friend of mine that was always conscious of her weight. And she was in a struggle. And I knew that her birthday was coming up. And instead of being, understanding and compassionate about, her circumstances, I gave her a cake. And she didn't want it. And she said, don't give me this. And here I'm thinking to myself, I'm doing something that is nice. And I was wrong. And I admitted to her I was wrong. you grow into this. And certainly if you love your spouse and you want to keep going, you damn well keep growing and learning and making sure that you can work together. Because these days,
but what happens? I mean, so obviously 60% of the people don't work together on it.
probably.
And it's even more because I'm sure there's another, like I said, 10, 15, 20% that are staying together because of kids or money. So, the way that I look at it is that, do we just suck at communicating, or do we suck at understanding and internalizing what's going on inside of each of us?
Both of those.
And so that's what I say is, it's like, like I knew that with, in my marriage, I knew that my wife had, a very harsh father, very, very male chauvinistic kind of person. And I knew at some point in time, me and him would laugh about whatever it was, but I knew that I was going to pay the price for that one day. You know what I'm saying? I was going to be categorized as a guy into that. I was put in that category. And, had I been smart enough at the time, I would have been like, let's address it now. Like, let's do this. But you're a kid. You don't know how to address these things. And then what happens is, by the time you get into your 30s and 40s, you've already started creating these wounds. And sometimes those wounds you can't heal because, like you said, the person's going to bring it up from years ago.
Can I give a solution that I learned about? I wish I would have done it, and would certainly encourage people to do it. There was a woman at the time I was dating, and her daughter and her future fiance went off on a camping trip. And they decided at night, before they went to bed, they were going to sit and tell each other their dark side. All the stuff that they felt would be deal breakers. And they did it, and it turned out, they did it for a long time. And the theory behind that, Roy, was if you know that person's dark sides and you still can love them, you still want them, you still cherish them, then it's a keeper. However, if some of the dark side stuff is too much, then you have a chance to say, no, I won't be able to tolerate this. So you have choices in this set of circumstances. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So now we realize, obviously relationships are hard. Okay. And then you take a look at the failure rates inside of that. Then you take a look at, what does this do to the children? Just like you said, right? How many suicides are caused because of this? Like, look at, for instance, you said it, when your parents got divorced, you were 17, and you've talked about it a lot. Okay. And even at your age, it's still right. It's in your memory bank.
I've dated women where their children were right in the middle of a World War III, and it was really bad news. So what I did, because I'm solution based in my life, I started working with a judge, and what we did was we started it was going to be a mandatory thing for parents with children to go through an 8-week course in learning not to put the children in the middle and make the children a tennis ball that goes back and forth in the relationship between the mother and the father. And it was very successful. And we did it for a number of years.
So why don't they incorporate that now with, all over?
Roy, age-old question for you. I have no idea. I just put this stuff out in the world, and then I hope that, people will step in and pick it up if they need it.
But everybody needs it. Anybody who's got kids is going through a divorce.
Absolutely. That's
right?
why we're sitting here talking about this now.
Yeah.
My
And those
hope
kids
is
pay
that
an ultimate
people,
price.
my hope is that people, and I'm hoping you share this with people, that people listen, and not because it's me, or not because I'm looking for, fame or anything else coming out of this. It's that some of these are solutions. And one of the things I discovered in working in solution-based concepts is you've got two choices in solutions. You can run towards the solution and try to resolve it, or you can run away from the solution. And then what happens then is it's like a snowball running, going downhill. After a while, there's an avalanche because it goes bigger and bigger and bigger. And people, instead of getting resolved, get more pain, more issues, more challenges. So anybody who's listening to this, hopefully I'm going to make the attempt to say, I'm going to move towards the solution. It has been such a boon in my life because I ran away. I ran away like crazy. And what I discovered was, I remember when I was in my teens and I was broke, you know what I used to do? If I had $50 left on my credit card limit, I'd go out and have lunch. So I learned that it doesn't get anywhere to pretend and run away that the problem is going to disappear because you're running away. And that's the best gift that I can give people because it served me tremendously. I mean, the last 30 years or a little more been great. I mean, been phenomenal. I have gotten, and this is not to, be able to pat myself on the back or anything. I have gotten the highest award in every phase of my life. And probably 90% of them came in the last 30 to 40 years. From my high school to my college to my fraternity to being acknowledged on the floor of Congress to be acknowledged by presidents and senators. And the list goes on. And the reason being is I'm happy now and I'm getting things done. Are you there? I lost you in the box. Roy? Roy? Honey? Honey? Shoot. Sweetheart? Can you come up? I don't know. Should I call him?
I guess. You were in the middle of talking and he just went away. I guess I was calling.
Hello?
Roy, I can't see you anymore.
Okay, hold on. I gotta see. For some reason, my computer cut out, but it's showing that it's charging. So let me see. Give me 1 minute, and I'll tell you what's going. Oh, here, hold on.
I think I know why. It's an angry couple.
What do you mean it's an angry couple?
We're talking about all this stuff, and people got angry, and they just, I'm teasing you.
Hold on. Let's see here. Okay, hold on. Here it is. Are you there?
I'm here. We're
Okay.
back.
Okay, hang up your phone. Or no, I'll hang it up. Okay, so basically, what you're saying is that I guess, right? You can always come up with the problems. I mean, everybody has problems. I mean, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and there's more than 8 billion problems. So we talk about them, but then the question is like, how do you fix what's broken, right? So like with you, your parents got divorced. Obviously it was not easy on you. And even at 80 years old, you still talk about it. And so you got to imagine that, more than half of this world. Now remember, you think about the United States with 337 million people, there's 8 billion people, and out of 8 billion people, like half the world is like, divorced, and so it's
Can I give you a substantive response here?
Sure.
What I did with my mother and father, and then went on to people in my life and my brother and a lot of other people. I forgave them. I used forgiveness.
I get that. So let's just use that.
Okay.
I forgive you, but it still doesn't stop the pain that has caused the children and people around you. And so the point is, when you say I forgive, that's good and that's easy, and you can mean it. But what I'm trying to get to is, how can you fix it ahead of time? One of the things that I always get a problem with is
if you're safe, and I'm back to this issue, if you're safe with your spouse or friend or relative, if you're safe, then you're able to get past some of the things that have transpired. If you're not safe, then somebody said this, Roy, and I love this. I wish I had said this, but it's genius. When you don't forgive, it's like you taking poison and expecting the other person to die. So many people carry around with them their anger inside, and the other person probably doesn't even know that you're carrying it and doesn't care. So,
well, do they really not care? Do they really not care?
I know of I have a dozen different situations where the other person would say to me, "What are you talking about? I didn't have anything bad. I didn't look at you as bad. I was going around. I had a national program I had developed, and I got to Detroit, and the arrangement with the program is I had to be able to couple it with a large organization or whatever. So I had my program in 11 states, and in Louisville, it was the National Red Cross, Dallas, the National Alliance of Businessmen. But in Detroit, I did Detroit Institute of Technology. That used to be over by Masonic Temple. I pitched them, Roy. They loved it. Day of the opening, I went to the vice president who I was talking to, in through the president or in lieu of the president. And the vice president says to me, because I said, all the press are coming. I want you to make statements. And he said, what do you mean statements? We didn't give you the okay. And I said, are you crazy? I got the okay from you a dozen times. And he said, no. And then he said something to me that just cut me deep. And he said, he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. And I thought, I'm never going to talk to this guy again. And years went by, and every time I thought about him, I just got angry. I was getting frustrated and angry because that was very embarrassing to me. All the press came from all different cities to talk about the opening. And I got the idea. I said, I'm calling him up. And I called him up and I said, let's have lunch. And we had lunch. And I told him everything. I told him that day what happened and everything. And this is what he said to me. He said, Jim, he said, I don't even remember saying that to you. I was going through a bad divorce. Whatever I said to you, it wasn't even, it wasn't even logical. And here I had walked around for years and would have still walked around with that anger. So a lot of times people don't even know that they've done this. And in order to be able to do this, you got to come together and communicate. Simple.
And so you have to communicate, and then the communication too sometimes has to be at the right time, right? Because he communicated to you, but he communicated to you at the wrong time. It was the wrong time in his life.
However, a lot of times when people are holding grudges, they've long since forgotten. And if you have to have strength to sit down to talk to somebody, whether it be a spouse or anybody else in your life, and to be able to admit your responsibilities and equally ask them to look at their responsibilities. So the relationships that can make it in life is when you come together with that. But you have to create safety in anything you do. I mean, you're a dad. If your kids don't feel safe with you, then they're gonna go out in the world and screw up big time. However, if they're safe with you, and I say this to parents all the time, because parents come up to me in every talk I ever give and say to me, Jim, what's a great parent? This is what I tell them. And Parents may see it or not see it. Doesn't matter. It's my feeling. I own it. And I say to them, if your son or daughter screws up in life, to know that you're a great parent is no matter how badly they screw up, they know they can always come home. And when you have that, that's when you're able to work with the situation and the person, because they feel safe enough to bring whatever pain they have back to you. And I encourage this. I didn't have it with my dad, and that was a tough thing for me. And I wanted so much to have it with my dad. But my dad was a businessman. And any emotions that I felt, my dad would say, tough up. Tough up.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So let's use that for a second. You say safe. You use the word safe, right? Like that is numero uno. So your children feel safe, and you provide a safe environment for them. Your wife has a safe environment with a home around her and those things, but she doesn't feel safe with you because of arguments, right? People argue just the way it is.
But that's not safe. Having a home and having, you talked about having money and a reason.
No, I just said a home.
No, but I'm just saying having a home there's a certain amount of comfort there. What I'm talking about safety is the ability to engage with your spouse or your children and to clear the air and work with them so that because every parent is scared to death that their children are going to go out in the world and get killed or become addicts or live in the street or whatever it is.
So communicate in a safe environment.
Yes.
So what do you think if people had a 30-minute a day safe environment? No matter what, you're fighting, you're arguing, boom, you hit the 30 minutes and you have to stop and reset and say, okay, you get to speak your piece and I can't say anything, and go through it. Because to me, you have to have things that people can put in place to exercise these things, right? You tell a trainer says to you, hey, you want to build bigger legs? Okay, you're going to do squats. You're going to do this. You're going to do this. And if you do them 3-4 days a week.
Whenever I would speak, Roy, I did a parent program at night and I invited kids back. And the way that I worked with this is I asked the parents to write on a 3x5 card their greatest fear as the parents of a teenager. Invariably, it was the ones I just shared with you. I don't want my kid to die, being drunk or being high or anything. So then I go from the parents to the kids and I say to the kids, do you trust your parents in what they're asking? Because they're asking, just I want to be independent. I want to be on my own. And so I asked, the parents, how do you feel about their solution? And the parents say, no way. I know what I was like, when I was young. No, I don't trust that. And then I run back to the kids and I say, your mother and dad don't trust you. What do you want to tell them? Well, I want to tell them that I can handle anything myself. And then I run back to the parents, and the parents say, they're not on your best day. And then I say to everybody in the room, are we getting anywhere? And everybody said, absolutely not. And so I came up with what has been a very effective way of engaging between parents and children. And I go to the parents and I say, what are you feeling now? And the parents will say, angry, mistrusting. Then I'll go back to the kids and I'll say, what do you think your mom and dad was feeling? And the kids would mimic it like what I just said. Mistrusting, frightened. And I tried to get the parents to understand, to talk in feelings. Because, Roy, everybody else in the world, when we do exchanges, it's always feelings. So if I say to you, Roy, I'm angry with you, and then somebody comes back to you and say, Roy, what do you think he was feeling? He's feeling angry. So that's where communication breaks down, is when we try to psych each other up and, find that key denominator. The key denominator is in the feelings. Because if you want your spouse to understand you, they have to understand, Roy, your feelings.
Yeah. And that's a hard part, I think, sometimes to open up, because you're so entwined.
Protective.
What's that?
Protective.
So protective about it. And it's crazy, because it's like, here's the way I look at it, and this is kind of funny. The kids can talk to you in just a terrible way, right? The kids sometimes, man, they just let you have it, right? If your spouse does that, oh my gosh, you're the worst person that ever walked the face of the earth. But when the kids do it, yeah, of course you're upset. But 3 hours later, you're like, hey, honey, how are you? Right? Or what do you need? Or, it's just crazy. But the person that you had the kids with, you're an idiot, right? And you don't want nothing to do with them. It's
What do you think your spouse, when you say an hour or two later, honey, do you need anything? What can I do? How can I help you? What do you think the spouse is feeling?
pissed?
Why?
Because you had an argument.
More.
They're hurt.
Right? And in being hurt, what's a normal thing when people get hurt?
Defensive.
Exactly. 100%. So you have these answers, Roy, and millions of people have the answers.
Hold on. That's not fair. And here's why it's not fair. When I'm talking to you, I am not in a defensive state right now. I'm in a more relaxed state about learning and understanding. When I'm fighting, I'm in an all-out mode. Or if someone's fighting with you, you're in a defensive mode. So you're not in the kind of mode that we're in right now. So
then you have to teach each other what you need in those moments.
Well, yeah, and that's why it's a fight, right? A fight isn't where you sit there and go, well, time out, right? The ref doesn't come out of the closet and go, hold on, Jimmy, time out. Everybody stop. And if that was the case, I think that you could save probably 70% of those marriages.
but you need to be able to understand. And this is where relationships break down. If you don't understand what that person is dealing with and acknowledge them, then in reality, they feel like you haven't heard them. You haven't. And I've had these discussions with my wife where that has transpired. And where I feel like she didn't really hear me. And then I've had ones where, I didn't really hear her. However, none of those situations were ever enough for me to say, I'm done. I don't want this anymore. And so if you're willing to keep fighting for the relationship.
Well, at some point in time, I think that some people get so bitter that it's hard to unwind. And here's my point. Let's just say what we're talking about right now is like you just said. It's just between you and Jan, right? Just you two. Those are the dynamics right now of your relationship. So when you have an argument, it's about you two, and the differences could be the day, time, whatever it is, the conversation. But when you start to talk about family issues that could bring into play, right? Your dad, your mom, your family, all these other demons that are still sitting there. Jan may go, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I don't even understand it, because she doesn't.
She is, and we've had those discussions. It isn't like you're saying to me. However, my wife at the bigger level knows that how much I love her and adore her and want the relationship and feel like it's an incredible relationship that I love. And as long as you could create that, then people can find a way. If you can't create that, then history takes over, Roy. And every time you have a fight, your spouse goes back 10 years and says, you're an ass.
Sure.
You're an ass. You did this in 1991, and you're an ass.
Sure. No question about that.
When people hold on to that history,
here's the $10 billion question, and it's probably bigger than that. How do you help people fix and identify it? And that's the question, right? How do you go, okay, hold on. Time out. Because it doesn't work that easy. If it did, people would stop and do it. So there has to be a way to have people stop.
Can I give you some ideas? Because I'm learning this as I'm going along. You first own responsibility. Because if you own responsibility, that other person, even if they're angry with you, they can't be as angry as if you're defending yourself. And the minute you get into the defense back and forth, you're in dangerous waters. Because everybody, and I mean everybody, wants to be right. But not everybody wants to be kind. As a matter of fact, my national program is called I'd rather be right than I'd rather be kind than be right. And we've done some phenomenal things with kindness.
Yeah. So, like I said, we have to figure out a way to put in, you know what, Jimmy, you know what I want you to do? Give some key points, because we got to start putting, listen, here's the thing that everybody does in these podcasts. Everybody talks about it and everybody has great points. And if we added 2 women, your wife, into this program, then we have 3 different opinions. If we added another person, we'd have 4 opinions. I think that there has to be actionable steps. Like the podcast just can't be podcast. You have to have a blueprint after. Like you just said earlier, the beginning of this podcast, the guy had goals, right? He wrote down his goals. We need to write down the things that we can now put to people and say, when this happens, take a look at this. Take a look at this.
I mean, if you establish goals and you say, and I'm giving you an example of this that is as close as I can get to what you're talking about. For most of my life, in my early life and to midlife, I was always late. I always thought I could do one more thing, and I didn't have to worry about whether there was traffic or, whether the car broke down or anything else. I was always late. And it drove my wife crazy because one of the key important areas of her life is being on time. And I remember coming up when I was first dating at this time. It was Thanksgiving, and my wife was cooking, and I was supposed to be there at 3, and she timed everything at 3. I got there at 6. And she just said, I can't deal with this. What hit me the most then was I'm losing my great love and my greatest love. And I better kick my rear into figuring out how I'm going to be on time. And right now, with the exception of a couple of minutes on very few occasions, I'm on time all the time. Because the impetus of losing somebody that you care about is greater than you just being right and wanting to do what you want to do. Best gift I'm giving everybody.
Okay.
So I think we've exhausted, I think this is one of your best podcasts, and I'm hoping people listen to it because I'm hoping on some level it saves some relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much. As always, I appreciate your time. Tell Jan thank you very much. And then we'll get ready for the next one.
All right. And that would be great. And I met you when I had dark hair.
Yeah.
Interesting time.
Jimmy, as always, I appreciate everything. Thanks, buddy.
Roy, I love you. You've got a great heart. And I know that looking for answers and things in your life. And, like everybody else, I don't have all the answers. But I'm hoping that people can be selective. And when they're selective, they'll take some of the answers that I've given and say, wow, I need to try that. That's all you're asking.
That's it. Thanks, Jimmy. Have a great day.
You too, buddy.
All right, take care.